Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and folks, this is a wonderful time of the year for sports. Baseball's getting into the swing of things. We got the NBA play-in this week. We have the NHL playoff race wrapping up, but it actually being an incredibly exciting finish. And we also have some news about the Arizona Coyotes relocating, Aaron Rodgers being insane once again and speaking his mind. So we have a ton of content from him on a podcast recently. We will talk about that later in the show. But first, say hello to Bradley Alsop, please.
We don't need to talk about Aaron Rodgers, do we?
We do, because now he's saying that Hillary Clinton may have been responsible for the death of JFK Jr., which, you know, since we actually have quite a few shared interests, every time I think of him, I think about Carol Radziwill, arguably the coolest Real Housewife of all time.
And her
best friends with him,
right,
yes.
Right, to Jack Johnson.
Cousin of her husband.
I mean, not ex-husband, but I guess
her
husband.
Late husband, yeah. I mean, oh gosh, I did not expect to be talking about Carol Radziwill to start this podcast, but she went through a ton. I mean, her husband died of cancer right after her best friend, and JFK Jr. died in that plane crash tragically, or actually were murdered. I apologize, by Hillary Clinton, according to Aaron Rodgers, or at least that's something he's hinting at. We'll get to that in a bit. But anyway, still an incredibly exciting, honestly, end to the NBA season and end to the NHL regular season.
I alluded to this in my tweet out of the show link, but to quote Jim Mora, the Colts coach of yesteryear, playoffs? You kidding me?
Yeah, but we are not kidding. These playoff scenarios are not a joke, because at least for the teams that we know in the NBA, they're in it, and they don't have to have playoffs question mark at the end. Although maybe the play-in teams do. That's where they can invoke Jim Mora. Playoffs?
You kidding me?
Okay.
But the interesting thing I found in these play-in matchups is that the West is obviously interesting just given the teams that are involved in the play-in, but I actually think in one way or the other, the East play-in matchups, even though some of them might be like less high caliber, will answer some interesting questions regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make a case either way, right? Where in the East in particular, the teams probably should have just been Miami and Philly as the 7 and 8 seed, or flip it around.
Right.
But you know what I mean? The Bulls and the Hawks have no business being in this conversation. And in part, look, I mean, that's unfortunate for the Hawks and the Bulls. They both have had a ton of injuries. Trae Young had to have finger surgery, and that knocked them down a bunch of wins, and Zach LaVine hasn't been available for the Bulls, but they put up a great fight against the Knicks at the end of the year when they had nothing to play for. Caruso's defense this year has been a really strong, a strong point for the Bulls, even though I always feel like they're just languishing over there in Chicago and they need to do a full reset of the entire organization.
I guess that's what I mean when I'm saying the questions to be answered is not necessarily how viable they'll be in the playoffs, but more answering the question of can they do anything to dispel the idea that the Bulls require a full scale reset after the DeRozan, Vucevic, and Levine trio pairing has kind of proven itself to not have worked. Now after the contract extensions of some of these guys as well, and also even the Billy Donovan experience that has been that has lasted way longer than I ever anticipated it to. And then the same goes for the Hawks in the sense of ultimately something may seem to have to give, or the center may not hold, and who is a casualty of that? Is it Trae Young or is it DeJounte Murray?
Yeah.
So I think both of those are kind of interesting narratives going into them but it's more existential in terms of their identities as teams, not necessarily their identities as playoff teams.
Absolutely. So for people in the back, or for people listening who may not know what the matchups are, we have the number 1 seed Celtics. Obviously, they locked that up quite a while ago. They will play the 8 seed, meaning they will play the winner of the second play-in matchup. So it's going to be 76ers versus the Heat in Philadelphia. The winner of that will go on to play the 2 seed Knicks, which is, you know, a 2 seed. But, you know, the 2 seed Knicks, I mean, they're going to be 76ers versus the Heat in Philadelphia. The winner of that will go on to play the 2 seed Knicks, which is, you know, a 2 seed. But, you know, the 2 seed Knicks, I mean, they're going to be 76ers versus the Heat in Philadelphia. The winner of that will go on to play the 2 seed Knicks, which is, you know, a little bit frustrating because the Knicks really played great basketballs down the stretch, and Jalen Brunson is hair on fire, but they end up drawing a much more difficult matchup than honestly they would have if they were to have been at the 3 seed. The Milwaukee Bucks are now going to be playing the Indiana Pacers. I think a lot of Knicks fans would have preferred that over the Miami Heat, over the 76ers, which now, it seems like Embiid is reasonably healthy. We don't necessarily know. But for now, Embiid is going to be playing in the play-in, might be at full strength for the playoffs. Looks like it's going to be a massive problem. And so I anticipate the 76ers to beat the Heat and go on to face the Knicks, and then I could see the 76ers with a healthy Embiid beating this team.
And it's suboptimal, obviously, because, the two choices are, one, the team that just had their former MVP from last year return to the team and have rattled off either 7 or 8 straight wins since that happened, or the team that knocked the Knicks out of the playoffs last year, who, despite having pretty terrible crunch time numbers in terms of their offense, had similar issues spanning back to last season, and yet they lost a play-in game, then won to get into the 8th seed, and then made the finals.
Yes.
So it is never my inclination to underestimate the Heat or the Heat, or especially the Embiid-led Sixers. But as you said, might have been nice if we had just bumped down one rung of the ladder to.
But Doris Burke was saying this on the broadcast, and my God, I mean, I just think about her. I find her so inspirational. Also, as a woman in a broadcasting field that's fairly dominated by men, just how much she must have scratched and clawed to get to the position that she's in as one of the top basketball commentators in the country. Also, clearly a Knicks fan. I just love how it just spills over into the broadcast from my perspective.
Well, they had 21 turnovers, and she was absolutely disgusted by it. She was like, what is this team doing?
But she was making...
Pick it up!
She was making the point yesterday or Saturday, whenever they played. Yesterday. Basically saying, you don't want to test the basketball gods. You want to play winning basketball up into the very end. And I hear that to a degree. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks could also get bounced by the Pacers. That's without Giannis, it seems like he might not be ready for game 1.
I mean, the Pacers, just ahead of the playoffs starting, dropped 160 points on I actually don't remember who they played, but they destroyed their opponent in game 82. And their defense has kind of been coming on much more strongly than it was in the first half of the season. And the Pacers have had the Bucks number. They've gone 2-1 against them. The only time that they lost was when Giannis put up 62 or 63 points against them. So I guess all that is to say is that the Bucks, when they've won that matchup, they won it via a Herculean performance by Giannis. And if Giannis is not potentially there and the Pacers can jump out to a 1-0 lead without Giannis, it's only one game, but it just makes it that much harder for the Bucks to advance.
Yeah, I mean, and so if that stands, right, if it's going to be the play-in predictions, if we both anticipate that the Sixers and the Heat are going to be able to advance, and that's not a guarantee, but if that does end up happening, I think we're talking about basically all of the matchups in the East being compelling in some way. I mean, the Celtics, look, they're going to, I think, win and advance past the first round, but if there's any team that could knock them off or is battle-tested enough, it would be the Miami Heat that did it last year, in the sense that they went on their own Cinderella run. And
let's not forget, the Hawks just a month or so ago, or maybe a few weeks ago, beat them 2 times straight.
Right. Well, that was also one of those games. Wasn't that DeJounte Murray just
went 44 out of 44?
Yeah, I don't know how statistically replicable that performance is, but your point is well taken. I don't think the Hawks are getting out of the play-in. I mean, they've struggled. They've struggled, and they really should be reevaluating, I think, their roster construction.
Totally.
But Cavs versus Magic is also interesting.
Yes, definitely. I think it's interesting in a lot of ways because the Magic have come on really strongly defensively, and as we've talked about last week or the week before, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner have kind of emerged as 2 very budding, young stars in tandem with one another, and the Cavs are kind of emerging again with all their 4 pieces intact after injuries to Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, and also of course they want to avenge their demons from last year, of wilting in the first round after really looking extremely promising, which is kind of similar here, is that they don't want to be, dispatched in the first round again by another kind of upstart team. This year it's the Magic as opposed to it being the Knicks last year.
I mean, I don't have any faith in this Cavs
That's what's
team.
hard to. That's what they sort of have to demonstrate that, right? Because
and if they get bounced in the first round again this year by the Orlando Magic, a young team in this way,
hungry team, yeah.
Okay, then all things are on the table, and then there's the option of like, are they going to actually move on from Donovan Mitchell?
Right. Like what of those 4 guys, of Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, like, is there a question of if there's someone to move on from, I guess?
I think that they would probably just try to get the best
return
that they could, and Mitchell's going to be their number one piece that they can move. So, in the end, if it ends up being, as I said earlier, the Sixers, the Heat that advance, all of the matchups in the first round are going to be really compelling in the East.
Because a Bulls entrance or a Hawks entrance would probably be a relative
sweep.
Kind of like
I think
formality for the Celtics.
A sweep or gentleman's sweep by the Celtics.
Right.
I mean, the Knicks are in for a rough, I think, like at least 6-game series, whether it's the Sixers or the Heat.
I predict a slog in some way, just because. Not only because of how I think the Sixers and the Heat would match up, but just how the Knicks play. Like the Knicks are always going to sort of try and bog you down in like this intense, sort of almost like brutal style of play.
Right.
So it's not going to be easy for either end.
So I guess I'm picking the Magic just because I have no faith in the Cavs and I want to be a little bit interesting here. And I'm going to take the Pacers because I don't really know if the Bucks are going to be able to recuperate if Giannis is out for more than 2 games, given the fact that the Pacers have had their number to a degree. So I think I'm going to say Celtics. Celtics beat the Heat in 6. Okay, this is my prediction. Celtics beat the Heat in 6. I can't go against the Knicks. I can't in my heart. So I'll say Knicks win in 7, okay, against the 76ers.
So we're presuming Heat Sixers emerge from the play-in. Okay.
And then that means that it's Pacers, Magic, Celtics, Knicks, right, that advance. Mm-hmm. So then you have Knicks, Magic, Celtics, Pacers. And then I think that the Knicks and the Celtics win those series in 5, and then the Celtics blow out the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
I can see that, and the thing is, to your point about the Magic and the Pacers, I think the 2 things that I was saying before is that the Magic defense is like legit. Like they are like lengthy, they're tenacious, they're strong, they are in your jersey. Like Jalen Suggs, who had a difficult, I would say, start to his career out of Gonzaga, has really shown himself to be like a jack of all trades kind of guy, especially on the defensive end. He's so long, he's so quick, he always has his nose for the ball. But the only concern I think for the Magic is that they're still sort of in the top, in between. They're basically like mid 20s on offense still. So I think if it's a matter of, if they have a good offensive game plan and can exploit some of the weaknesses of the Cavs, which I will say, the thing that I think was very clear with the Knicks series last year was that there's a toughness disparity with the Cavs.
That's my concern with them.
The big men are not as kind of sturdy as you'd like them to be in terms of like rim protection, or kind of just like going into the lane, drawing contact, getting easy buckets via layups, or getting to the line. So I think it can swing both ways, but I think those 2 points are in the Magic's favor. And then what I just said about the track record for the Pacers, as well as just how there's an argument that this Pacers offense is like the best in the league. Like they just have so many options. It's so well constructed. Rick Carlisle has done such a good job of maximizing all of the potential of all of these guys around the orbit of Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
But even guys like TJ McConnell are like creating shots and like creating opportunities where like you would usually only see a guy like McConnell as like a defensive stopper and kind of like a hard-nosed point guard sort of. And he's like literally like making shots and getting to, like driving into the paint, and guys like Jalen Mills are coming along. Like they're a scary team for a team that actually kind of blitzed the Bucks 2 out of 3 times they played.
You mean Jalen Smith?
Jalen Smith, I'm sorry, not Jalen Mills.
Yeah.
Jalen Smith, who I think has just come on as like a kind of like passing hub, but also kind of like a creative guy around the rim to get stuff out of those guys like non-Miles Turner bigs. I think is great.
Yeah,
and so I could definitely see them being a little bit of a problem for the Bucks. And also, lest we forget, the Bucks are scuffling into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They have won, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of 8 or something heading into the playoffs. They are not playing great basketball. And with Giannis out, the big quartet is who have comprised the most effective lineups for the Bucks. So Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Giannis, and Damian Lillard. Without Giannis, that's an extremely, if not the extremely integral piece to that quartet, alongside either Patrick Beverley or whoever succeeding, or Malik Beasley or what have you. So I could see there being some missteps, and also the vibes. And I know this is completely intangible stuff. Just things don't seem like they're going smoothly in Milwaukee.
No, they do not. I mean, and we said
troublesome.
It was exactly what we predicted when they hired who they hired. I mean, and there's just like no other way around it. I don't understand this.
Right.
I mean, they're being like the Milwaukee Bucks are doing an NHL thing, and it makes zero sense to me.
Just get the guy who has
cachet or experience,
or has the name recognition also.
Totally. Yeah. So I mean, I also should take it back. Honestly, I think the Knicks would give the Celtics the most grief in a matchup. I think the Celtics are going to the are going to the finals no matter what, really. But I take that back. I don't think the Celtics would completely 4-1 beat the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Final.
No, I think they'd give them some trouble.
I think the Knicks could win 2 games, but I think that the Knicks are going to have trouble with the 76ers. I mean, the one thing that I feel better about is Mitchell Robinson is healthy now.
Yep.
Isaiah Hartenstein is not a good matchup for Joel Embiid. Mitchell Robinson, maybe they can start him and he can be on the floor. They can coordinate a little bit so that they can get...
And with help from OG Anunoby, I think is crucial as well, because Anunoby, with his length, at least maybe not as much height, has taken on some very tough defensive assignments.
Yep.
And even with Giannis in that most recent win against the Bucks, Giannis still had 30 or 35 because he's Giannis. He's not going to get completely stifled by somebody. But OG is a kind of one of those guys who I think can keep a star like Embiid or Giannis down to earth a little bit more.
Yeah, OG Anunoby has been an absolute injection of defensive prowess into the Knicks starting lineup. He's arguably one of my favorite Knicks over the past 10 years by a lot.
Just
already.
By virtue, I think, of being almost like what Brunson did when Jalen Brunson came over. Sort of like a skeleton key type of player of the Knicks have kind of always needed a guy like this, and they just have never had this guy.
Yeah. You can see why the coaching staff was coveting him. He's a perfect fit for the Thibodeau system. We've spent a good amount of time on the East. Over in the West, it was incredibly...
It's insane, this
I mean,
bracket
this bracket is nuts. The Thunder and the Nuggets first seed matchup went down to the wire, and the Nuggets lost to the Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs. I mean, Wemby is coming on at the end of the year. He's going to be a problem next
NBA
season.
NBA fans beware.
I mean, wow. So he really has had a later season resurgence and is showing everybody why he's been a generational talent for quite a while, considered as such. So the Thunder will play the 8th seed, the Nuggets will play the 7th seed, and that's between the Pelicans and the Lakers, who are playing in the play-in game. Again, a rematch of literally what they were their game the other day.
Yep, right.
And then the Kings and the Warriors are going to be vying for. They have to win 2 in a row. Whoever ends up winning that will be the 8th seed. And I'm in these kinds of situations, especially with a team like the Kings, where they're way too banged up. They lost Malik Monk. It's changed their entire, the outlook of their entire season.
They're not who they were necessarily last year.
I think the Warriors will beat them. I actually don't think it'll be particularly close, especially when you see kind of how Draymond and Steph are playing on the floor together, and some of the advanced analytics about how they just are plus tandem anytime they're out there, and all of the experience that comes with it. I just think that they're going to be able to beat them, and then it comes down to whoever wins or loses that Lakers Pelicans matchup, and I'm just going to go with experience in those instances. So I'm taking the Lakers as the 7th seed, and then I'm taking the Golden State Warriors as the 8th seed. I guess it's not really a fun, a divergent opinion, but that's just my gut feel.
The Lakers, so just to recap in a way that I think it passes potentially any sort of prologue for this game, the Lakers beat the Pelicans by 16, 124-108 here, and LeBron James, who will be 40 at the end of this year, had in a little under 40 minutes, had 28 points, 11 rebounds, and 17 assists, 13 in the first half. And if they can replicate anything close to this, which is just LeBron being basically like a turbo jumbo point guard.
Yes.
Feeding Rui Hachimura down low, finding open shooters and if D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves can hit those shots, if tertiary players like Hachimura is honestly an incredible offensive engine for the Lakers now, which is I think been exactly what they've wanted that to be, that tandem of LeBron and Rui, because he has such athletic gifts and such measurable gifts in terms of measurables, such long arms, such kind of like a crafty player. But also guys like Taurean Prince, et cetera, if they can kind of get going as well via LeBron, I think that the same outcome is there, because the Pelicans have had this sort of herky-jerky end to the season where they've had really stretches of great play, but then the stretches where the combo of CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson looks like disjointed, looks kind of like it's not fully meshing or coagulating the way you think it should, having that much talent. So I think even if it's, as you said, potentially more predictable or more kind of like, oh, okay, Lakers Warriors in the playoffs, I think that is the likelier outcome, but I also think it's the outcome where the 1-8, 2-7 matchups actually become much more interesting.
Yes. Thing in the I guess you would be more afraid of playing, the Lakers than you would be the Pelicans.
No question. If I'm the Thunder, I would much rather play a beat up Kings team or a kind of like more
diminished Warriors team
or more rudderless Pelicans team than I would like Steph Curry.
But they're not going to play the Pelicans, or OKC will not be playing the Pelicans no matter what.
Oh, sorry, either the Warriors, Kings or Lakers.
Right.
Yeah, I would not want to see the Warriors or LeBron, because I actually think the Lakers kind of match up uniquely well against the Thunder, because
I think that has been the record this year. I don't think that the Thunder have been able to beat the Lakers, if I'm not mistaken,
just by virtue of size and rebounding capability.
But I mean, I think the Lakers are the Pelicans have only won one game out of 4 against the Lakers this year. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing where, I know Brandon Ingram is back now. He missed some games, but it's going to take some time for him to get back there. The one thing is just like Anthony Davis was having more issues with his back apparently at the end of the game on Sunday, which I didn't necessarily see the end of. So if he's not healthy, then that's an issue for them.
Because honestly, he's outside of LeBron. Like, of course, I mean, AD, he's always been sort of like the frustrating thing has been his inconsistancy. But throughout this whole season, he's actually played.
He's played really well,
like almost like first team or at the very least second team type of play. So
basically, it's going to be we'll either have Nuggets Pelicans, which would be fascinating, or Nuggets
big versus big matchup.
Yeah, or Nuggets Lakers. That's either the either thing that we're going to see. And then it's the Thunder will play either the Lakers, Kings, or Warriors. There we go. That's the play-in situation. The play-in in the West makes a little bit more sense than what we're seeing in the East, because there are actually 4 teams that are more deserving. I don't know about the Kings right now, but the Pelicans, Lakers, and Warriors, it makes sense. And then all of those teams have winning records, unlike in the East, where it's just so much weaker over in the East.
And comfortable winning records.
Yes.
Like the Lakers who are in their seeding in the play-in would be like the 6th seed in the
yes.
East.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. So, I mean, I guess I'm clear about what I'm predicting there. I'm thinking Warriors at Thunder, Lakers at Nuggets. Man, I still think the Thunder and the Nuggets win out, but I don't know. I mean,
the Thunder are inexperienced, obviously, because literally 2 years ago they had won 24 games. It is an incredibly young team, but they have a few guys who in some capacities, just depending on how they're playing, are kind of matched. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to me is a little matchup proof, just because he's so good from every angle that you could possibly imagine, and he very rarely turns the ball over.
But Chet Holmgren, that would be a bit of a difficult situation. If Anthony Davis is healthy, all right, then we're having a bit of a different conversation.
Or even if somehow, some way, which I think Darvin Ham and the Lakers might try to employ, is like, if there's a lot of spamming of like switching LeBron James on a Chet Holmgren, it's going to be a tough night for Chet most nights.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have the Timberwolves versus the Suns. And honestly, that matchup I could see that going 7 games.
It's going to be awesome
with the star power on each side of the ball. I think I'm still going to take the Wolves in 7. I mean, we'll see what Cat does in his return and his impact. But I mean, the Suns, there's just something missing there. They don't seem to be able to kind of have the most clutch performances from what I have seen. And then Clippers versus Mavericks, that's going to be awesome.
It'd be so awesome.
Because, I think everybody's and their mother is going to be taking the Dallas Mavericks in this situation, given how they've been playing to end the year.
And the fact that Luka Doncic very consistently has had the Clippers number in the playoffs
he would be my pick for MVP this year. I mean, like, that's the kind of that I think the Mavericks are going to win that, and I think that they'll actually win it pretty easily. But I then hesitate to say that because everyone's going to be saying that, given how the Mavericks have been playing. So I think I'm going to take the Thunder. I'm going to take the Nuggets to advance. I'm going to take the Timberwolves, and then also just to, give a shout out to our buddy Matt. And then I'll take the Mavericks. So then we have Thunder Mavs, Nuggets Wolves, Nuggets advance. All right, I'm taking the Mavericks over the Thunder.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah, Mavericks over the Thunder. And then I'm going to have the Nuggets beating the Mavericks, and then Nuggets, Celtics, like I've always said. 2 most complete teams in the NBA in the finals.
Because I would argue the reason that I was assuming we were going to get to Nuggets Celtics just because I honestly, just in terms of I know how we've been thinking about this, but I would say like the Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jamal Murray versus Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Kristaps, and Derek White are like the 2 like miles away, like best starting fives, like most complete, like kind of like there's an inability, I think, from my perspective, to find weaknesses in those lineups. And so for those 2 to match up in the finals would be like truly like iron sharpening iron type stuff.
I take the Nuggets in that matchup,
and
though.
I still would take the Nuggets
just
because of Jokic being Jokic and the cohesion of that team and how little drop off there's been
can match Kristaps. Jokic can, of course. Like, I mean, but I think, Porzingis and having a big man like that can shoot from so many different ranges, like,
and could potentially draw Jokic out into space potentially.
Yes,
in terms
or
of
other bigs, right? That's the liability that we're talking about here. But Jokic is such a unicorn that it's I don't know. I have such faith in the Nuggets and the way that they're constructed as well. But it really is. I don't feel good about it. This isn't like the years where it's like, okay, we know who we're going to see. We know it's going to be Golden State.
I would say the parity here is, as we've talked about in the past, is like you're seeing it very much, I think, across the league, but like especially in the West, where the West. 4 play-in teams, like basically, I would say, like on average, are like 8 to 10 games over 500.
Totally.
Which is nuts.
And while we wrap up basketball here, I do want to say tonight is the WNBA draft here in Brooklyn, right down the road over there.
As I was saying it when we were talking about the NCAA final, it's a really crazy few weeks for these women.
Yeah.
They had the finals of the tournament. Caitlin Clark was literally on Saturday Night Live.
I saw that.
Saturday night, and then she's probably going to be drafted first overall tonight.
Oh my God, that applause line that she got from that liberal New York SNL crowd loving a woman athlete.
She literally had to break it through, like get through her line. She was probably so nervous. She probably was like, I need to read the line of the cue card. Can you stop clapping, please?
I know. Well,
I'm
also,
20 years old.
Blink and you'll miss it, but SNL's kind of been on a bit of a hot streak lately.
Well, but you and I, like, we also just like, when Gosling's on, it's going to be good.
But before that, do you know who was hosting the week before? Kristen Wiig.
Yeah,
that was also a good episode.
Of course.
They're kind of quietly. They've been pretty much dog shit for quite a while. I mean, I don't really want to say. It's been maybe 5 years since I've seen a really good episode of SNL until recently. Now they've done 2 in a row.
I think with the writers and some of the casting decisions, they're like figuring it out a little bit more. But like,
yes,
the Caitlin Clark thing I thought was very funny, but also the Gosling Beavis and Butthead bit. If you guys haven't seen it, it's really good.
Really good. I mean, Gosling is just made for this. Made to be. He's a comedian in so many ways. He's so funny and perfect in every way. Anyway, Caitlin Clark's going first overall to the Indiana Fever.
Yes, that's the odds-on choice, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, then you have the woman out of Stanford, Cameron Brink. You have Camila Cardoso, who is most likely going to be a top 5 pick. Obviously, just won the national championship. You have Aaliyah Edwards. Who did I mention? Angel Reese.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, the WNBA is ripe for expansion right now. They don't only have 12 teams. It's not enough. Not enough for the number of amazing women's players that are coming into the pros at this point. And I think, this will be one of the last drafts where it's this truncated, because I would guess that expansion is coming in the next 5 or so years. And
it's been a bit of a, since Sabrina Ionescu was drafted to the New York Liberty, and kind of the consolidation of Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray on the Aces. It's kind of been a 2-team arms race between the Liberty and the Aces the last few seasons. And I kind of think with some of this really generational talent, i.e., as we're saying, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Edwards, Cameron Brink, Camila Cardoso, because Cardoso is, literally 6'7", unbelievable rebounder, unbelievable paint presence. Having that infusion of talent. To say nothing of Angel Reese, who I honestly think too, Cardoso as a big, because she's 6'7", I would say is honestly a little bit more talented, a little bit more imposing than Angel Reese. But I only think that Angel Reese, because of her frame, still has so much to develop into. She's only going to get stronger and smarter and get better on both sides of the floor. So I just think all of this infusion, and also Aaliyah Edwards on UConn, who low-key, even though Paige Beckers was obviously the draw for UConn, Aaliyah Edwards was very much one of the most reliable presences on that team. So all of that infusion of talent, I think it'll take a little bit. I think many WNBA players, past and present, have basically said, it is a different step.
Yeah.
So maybe if it's not going to happen immediately for these women, in the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to see a lot of these teams level up.
I know.
Which I think is super exciting.
Oh, I wish Caitlin Clark was coming to the New York Liberty.
Oh my God, that'd be unfair.
My fiance's company has a Liberty ticket, so I was just
oh no way.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might
maybe go for a Fever game.
Might try to. Well, I know, but now everyone's gonna try to go for the Fever game. Right. But maybe if I can get in a little bit early, make the request early.
And then but what's interesting is we saw in the final, because Aaliyah Boston, the number 1 overall pick from last year for the Fever, was there because she's a former South Carolina grad, and so she was there celebrating with the team, which was nice to see. But then now it's seemingly Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston will be teammates in Indiana, so that's going to be a fun pairing to see at the next level as well.
Totally. I mean, so it'll be cool to see how it shakes out, but we already know who's going first overall.
Yeah. I don't think there's any suspense.
Absolutely not. I mean, even the broadcast during the college basketball final, the women's NCAA final, were saying, "Oh, future teammate of Caitlin Clark," not even qualifying. Right. So it's pretty clear what's happening there. Let's turn to the NHL, because I as incredible as the finale to the NBA season was, the NHL finale, to the regular season is also incredibly impactful. There's basically very few playoff seeding situations that are set in stone right now. I mean, right now, the New York Rangers have the best record in terms of point totals in the NHL, and then the team that is second behind it, tied with the Dallas Stars, is the Carolina Hurricanes. So if the Rangers lose this final game, they could not just lose the President's Trophy, which is against the Ottawa Senators tonight. They could lose the division, which is crazy, because the Carolina Hurricanes, they can win and they can end up, taking the President's Trophy, or the Dallas Stars could. I'm not exactly sure how that tiebreak breaks out, but at the very least, the Rangers would lose the division, and then they'd be playing the Islanders in the playoffs. Right now, it's locked into if the Rangers win, they have the best record in the league, and that's tonight. That will be determined. But then you have Boston and Florida That's a little bit in flux because the Florida Panthers, even though they have one game more, they are only a point behind the Boston Bruins in that division. And then it's the Panthers, the Leafs, if all things hold. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, that's really the only spot in the East that's kind of locked up. They're going to be the top wild card. And they'll probably, actually, I guess it is locked up. They will play either Boston or Florida, whoever ends up winning the Atlantic Division. But the final wild card spot in the East is still up for grabs. Right now, it's the, I guess, who's locked into it as of right now. I mean, this is completely in flux, not locked in. The Washington Capitals are in it.
Wow.
But they have two tough opponents coming up. So the Washington Capitals currently are in a playoff spot, which makes no sense because their roster is horrible. Like of these,
I was surprised because I sort of feel like after last year or the year before, the Capitals very much were like
no, they're
in a rebuild or sort of like a reset, anticipating almost the Ovechkin.
Oh yeah,
retirement
no, their roster is very bad. I mean, honestly, Charlie Lindgren, brother of New York Rangers defenseman Ryan Lindgren, has been carrying that team on his back in goal in Washington for like the entire season. He's been playing really, really well this year. But they're currently in that spot. However, they have 2 games left. They play the Boston Bruins, and then they play the Philadelphia Flyers, who have kind of regressed to the mean recently, and they're technically alive for that final wild card spot, but that's not going to happen, I think. And so if the Capitals really lose one of those games, which I think that they will because Boston is so good and Boston has stakes involved in this, as I just mentioned, because they have to lock up their division, then they're not going to be able to get into the playoffs, and the Red Wings have 2 games left. I can't believe the Red Wings also, like, not necessarily a team that's a world beater right now. The East is much weaker than we anticipated. They have 2 back-to-back games against Montreal to close out the year. And Montreal is one of the worst teams in the league.
Right, they're very bad.
So if the Red Wings sweep the Canadiens, they will get in if the Capitals lose to either Boston or Philadelphia. And I think that the Capitals will lose to Boston, so we'll see. Like, in terms of strength of schedule, the Red Wings have the easiest path to getting that final spot. But then you also have the Penguins, who were they've been surging. Sidney Crosby should be an MVP. Like, front. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Evergreen statement. That's literally Sidney Crosby still 2024 is just doing like genius shit on the ice.
Their roster is bad, right? But they traded away their second best player currently in or third best player, whatever, Jake Gensel, who they traded to the Carolina Hurricanes and who's been tearing it up down there and has clearly been the best trade deadline acquisition so far. So, like, they're also still in the mix here. And if the Red Wings or the Capitals falter, the Penguins can slide into that final wildcard spot. But again, this is 1 or 2 games for each of these teams left in the regular season, deciding this stuff, and the President's Trophy. And then when you turn to the West, it's a little bit more settled over there because all of the teams have been determined, but it's not that settled. As I mentioned, the Dallas Stars still have the opportunity, if the Rangers lose tonight, to get the President's Trophy. And then the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche within the Central Division are within a point of each other, and that's going to determine home ice. But, like, you know, that matchup is kind of set. It's most likely going to be, I think that is actually set. It's going to be the Winnipeg Jets versus the Colorado Avalanche. It just depends which team is going to have home ice. And then the Predators and the Golden Knights are locked into those final 2 wildcard spots there. And what do you know? The Knights have Mark Stone coming off long-term IR right in time for the playoffs, just learning from the best, learning from the Tampa Bay Lightning about how to cheat legally.
Mark Stone woke up. He's like, I feel fine today.
Yeah. I feel so much better now as soon as the playoffs are approaching.
I've been resting for quite some time. I feel absolutely okay, and I'm ready to play the entire run of the playoffs. I'm ready to play. With my Stanley Cup defending team.
Totally. I mean, and so, like, I don't really actually think the Knights are that good this year. They've been up and down, and even with this kind of return, I don't know if I could see them as the final seed here, making a run. Right as of now, they would be facing the Dallas Stars, and I think the Stars win that matchup given how they've been playing. But still, lots of things in flux. And in the Pacific, you have the Vancouver Canucks leading that division. fairly handily. They have 2 games left, and they can lock that up. But then it's Oilers versus Kings, which I think is a rematch from last year.
Yep.
And that'll be a really exciting series. That's always a bit of a tough rivalry between the 2 teams over there. The two of the Gretzky teams from back in the day.
Yeah.
I always think of Gretzky in the Oilers jersey first, or Rangers jersey second, the Kings jersey after that. So that's that's going to be an exciting matchup too. But as of right now, if all things stand, it'll be the Canucks will play the Predators, and then the Oilers will play the Kings, and then the Golden Knights will play the Dallas Stars as the final wild card team. But again, there's still some things that could change, like
shuffle.
Technically, the Predators could lose, right, their next game, and I'm not sure who they play next. Let me check. So the Preds play the Penguins, and the Penguins are desperate. That's their final game. If they don't collect a point in that game, then the Golden Knights could win out with their final 2 games against the Blackhawks, and then I guess they have one more against the Anaheim Ducks, 2 of the worst teams in the league. So then they could jump them, and that could switch up the playoff matchup. So then it could be, as I mentioned, Golden Knights.
So still a little hard for us to prognosticate the bracket, I guess, because it's not fully set.
Well, I'm thrilled about it, right?
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
It's been like a good finale to the regular season for the NHL. Lots of parity this year, and the New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins are leading their divisions, right? But a lot of advanced analytics don't look favorably upon either team. The Bruins, I think, are more pretenders than the Rangers, because they just still don't have the depth. They have incredible veteran experience, but I think that the Bruins could get bounced in the first round by the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think that's not out of the question.
Well, because I think, to our Warriors point, it's a similar thing with the Lightning. It's like it's never ideal to face the guys who've been there before so many times in the first round.
And I have immense faith in the Florida Panthers. They are not a good special teams team, but I would so much rather have a grinding, forechecking hockey team in the playoffs than what the Rangers are. And I love my Rangers. I'm very nervous about the situation because it feels like all or nothing this year. But the Rangers are a goaltending and special teams reliant team. And what happens when you don't get penalties, or when the penalty kill has your number? Like, what the Florida Panthers can do is forecheck, keep the pressure on, stay in the offensive zone, and then the opportunities present themselves. And if the other teams aren't disciplined on defense, then you see an issue there. Look, I think the Rangers do have a chance to win the Cup this year, but I think that they have a desperate need to improve at 5v5. And what could change things is that Filipino, out of nowhere, is skating with the team again. Now, they might be doing the long-term IR cheating thing too,
but which was not expected, because I feel like me and you were talking. We did not expect him to be back for some time. Right?
I mean, I'm concerned about it in general. I don't even know if this kid should be playing hockey anymore.
Right.
The number of concussions
the condition
that
he's under for what he's experienced.
He's experienced severe concussions. He's 24, 25 years old. And also, what's interesting is that the Rangers acquired a third-line center where he'd been playing. Well, he'd been playing on the second line. Trocheck took that spot, and now that's cemented for him. I mean, he's having a career year on that line with Panarin and Lafreniere. But what do you do with Alex Wemberg, who now is the third-line center, who's been playing really well, actually, with Capo Caco, and quite well defensively on that third line? Does Filipino play wing? Does he even come back in the Rangers playoff run? I mean, there's a lot of questions here that are in flux. But I think Bruins are top of my list of terms of like pretenders in the East. And then unfortunately for me, I mean, the Rangers are number 2 just because they have the most to fall from. And the Leafs.
Which I think we can always slap that on.
Yes.
For basically every Leafs team.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, Igor Shesterkin could stand on his head. And if the Rangers can get going 5v5, they really are the most dangerous team in the league. It's just like, it's hard for this Rangers team. They need to create they need to be in space to create. They're not, Panarin is their superstar. He's not the strongest, biggest guy. It's not like he's Matthew Tkachuk or like even Alexander Barkov on the Panthers, where these guys are just bigger, meaner players, right? He needs a little bit of space to create, and that's why the Rangers are so good on special teams. But if they can find that groove, there's something there. the Hurricanes, they may finally have it with Gensel. Like, they may finally have a star that can get them to just, like, be a little bit better than their excellent system provides for them. The Islanders, I have no faith in. I can't even believe that they're in the playoffs.
But it's so funny.
Shocking. And Sorokin's not even playing well this year.
But it's so funny because I feel like that's what me and you had been discussing about the Hurricanes, is that, like, we know how high the floor is just by virtue of how well the team plays. But I feel like me and you were both thinking, like, an infusion of some sort of X factor could actually take them over the edge where they couldn't really get over in past playoff cycles. And a guy like Jake Gensel is almost like that exact characterization. That exact, like, a guy who can kind of call his own number and score.
Yeah.
As opposed to sort of, like, staying, like, operating in the Hurricane system, but then branching out of it if need be to actually, you know, carry out some heroic feats that other guys weren't necessarily doing.
Yes, completely. And so I think that the Carolina Hurricanes really do have a shot this year. So I'm maybe contradicting myself about the strength of the East, but I do think it's actually really a 4-team.
It's like top heavy in a way. Like it's like.
Yeah. Look, I still don't believe in the Bruins. I believe in the Panthers. I believe in the Hurricanes. I sort of believe in the Rangers, and I sort of believe in the Lightning. And I think it's between those 4 teams.
For sure. I agree.
That's my sense. And then in the West, I don't believe in the Winnipeg Jets. I believe in the Dallas Stars. The Avalanche have been really inconsistent this year, despite being just 2 years removed from winning a cup. And I told you, I have my faith in the Oilers. I think that the Oilers are actually kind of good and maybe more disciplined this year.
And a little deeper, which is what we were talking about before. They just have some more options outside of Draisaitl and McDavid, which they weren't really having last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyway.
I would go nuts if the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup. It would give me more reasons to wear my McDavid jersey.
Oh, my gosh, yes. I mean, look, if the Rangers aren't going to take it, I do want McDavid to actually find a... Like, and I would be happy for Canada. I mean, when's the last time that the Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup? It's been quite a while.
I don't know. If I'm not mistaken, it hasn't happened this century.
Yeah, I don't think so. Last time a Canadian team was before I was born. The Montreal Canadiens won in the 92-93 season before either of us were born.
That is crazy.
So 31 years ago, 32 years ago.
When the Habs were like the cream of the crop, when they were like the kind of dynastic hockey team, and now it's just not been that way.
It's been, years. It has not been. I guess you can understand a little bit more why those Vancouver fans rioted and burned down the city.
Yeah, wanted to actually set fire to their homes.
Law and order. Yeah, law and order.
Until the Canucks lose the Stanley Cup.
Oh, why people are doing it doesn't really matter. It's okay. So yeah, I guess we'll hold off a little bit on giving our predictions. I mean, when did the NHL playoffs officially start? They never are this exactly clear about it. Okay, they start on Saturday the 20th. So we're going to have to give a little bit of abbreviated predictions, but what can we do? There's no matchups that are available for us. We don't know what's happening. Yeah. So they start on Saturday. We'll give you a bit of our thoughts and then our updated predictions once we know more information, I guess early next week. And before we move on, I do want to just note that this is also, in terms of like, there's a lot of parity in the NHL this year. This is also an incredibly deep MVP race, Hart Trophy race. Yeah. Because, as I said earlier, Sidney Crosby, you can make an incredible case for that. I just don't think...
He should at least be considered. Like, it should be mentioned. It should be mentioned. That.
If the Penguins make the playoffs, it also elevates it, even though I don't know if I believe, like... But you have to make the playoffs for these kinds of organization or these voters to take you seriously.
Narratively seriously.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you could make a case for Connor Hellebuck, who has elevated the Winnipeg Jets 100%. In a way that they probably shouldn't be here. I think Artemi Panarin, like, you look at the gap for him as a goal scorer and then everybody else, it's also like Trocheck is up there because he's on his line. Lafreniere's having a career
elevating other players by virtue of his play.
Yes.
Well. Yeah.
I mean, Panarin is having an elite year and is one of the top 5 scorers in the league. David Pastrnak is also up there, and he's having an incredible year without Patrice Bergeron. But none of these people that I'm mentioning are going to win. It's going to be between Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, Auston Matthews, Nikita Kucherov. Auston Matthews has 69 goals on the year as of recording this.
Crazy.
So he has one more game to get to 70. I saw that the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs was basically saying that they think that they lost that last game to, who did they lose to here? The last game that the Toronto Maple Leafs
Was it was against the Red Wings?
Yeah, they
5-4
lost
in overtime.
Yep, they lost to the Red Wings. Thank you for that. That was in part because they felt like they were chasing that he said it was a distraction.
chasing Matthews' goal total.
Chasing number 70, making history, which like you don't normally hear coaches say that, right? Like how this individual record was a distraction, especially in hockey. They don't usually admit that. So I appreciated the honesty of that. But it's between Austin Matthews, Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, and Nikita Kucherov, who is not going to be the guy that, like, I think lights up highlight reels because he doesn't do it in the sexiest way, but he is as efficient as humanly possible. So right now, Nikita Kucherov leads the league at 141 points with 2 games to go, so he could cement the scoring title fairly easily if he just keeps up on this pace.
I literally feel like I'm 28 now. I literally feel like since I was 18 years old, I have thought to myself, oh wow, Nikita Kucherov is having the best season of his career.
Yeah, I mean,
and like literally like clockwork again, 2024. He is like, I'm like, oh, this might be the best season of his career.
Yeah. The thing that but I think I would pick Nikita Kucherov for the MVP, just given.
I think it's like very warranted, even though obviously Matthews has the goal total. I more mean like in like comprehensively, like
yes,
what he does for that team across every facet of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna what is their scoring situation over there? Much like Artemi Panarin, so he has 141 points. The next guy up is Braden Point with 89.
That is crazy.
That's how much offense he's generated.
That's an over 50-point disparity.
And so I know it sounds easy because he's the leader in points and he'll probably end with the scoring title, but he's my MVP for that reason because of how he elevates the rest of the team. But again, these voters are dumb, and the fact that they're a wild card team means that he may not get it. I would not take Nathan MacKinnon even though he's second because of the nature of the way that Colorado is constructed. I mean, McKinnon's great, but he's not a guy that necessarily sets up other players in the same way. He's really strong off the rush. He's a big body. He's fast as hell. But Nikita Kucherov, but he has Cale Makar on his team. That's the other thing where it's just like, okay, you have Cale Makar on your team, and and Mikko Rantanen, who also is having a 100-point year. So McKinnon would not be my vote. I'd probably do Kucherov, then McDavid. McDavid's the MVP every year.
That's the thing also. I think also voters like to have a variance just so it's a little bit of a different story.
Then I'm going to do Austin Matthews, and then I'd say Nathan MacKinnon. But all of these guys are having incredible years.
Totally. And I think to your point about that relative to McKinnon, like Kucherov, there's something to be said, I think, about being able to distribute and make and elevate the level of play of your teammates while also very much getting your own and having that presence offensively as well.
Yeah.
It's like he's not taking just a distributor role to elevate his teammates. He's also scoring.
Yep.
And voluminously.
Right.
So to be able to do both in those parts and amass that many points to the point where you were literally over 50 points over the next person on your team while still elevating their play, that's extraordinary stuff to me.
Yeah, and McDavid, again, he was not playing for most of the year and is still just creeping up. Not most of the year, sorry, I misspoke. He was not playing for a portion of the year, and they had such a slow start over there in Edmonton. And then he's still just been racking up points to meet the pace of those other guys.
I mean, he's just the best.
He has created a career. He's made Zach Hyman have a career year over there. One of the most
50 goals.
Over 50
that's
goals.
Insane.
Totally unexpectedly. And that's
Zach Hyman?
Zach Hyman. Yeah, and it's because McDavid is doing what he's amazing at, which is creating offense for everybody on the team. But Austin Matthews 70 goals is hard to ignore.
I think that's part of it, though, is that
and the Toronto bias is real. So
yeah, and you want because the way I view it sometimes too, and this is not this actually isn't a critical comparison. I just mean in terms of allegiance and importance to the kind of history or kind of myth making of the game is the Leafs are like the Knicks. The Leafs are like the NHL Knicks.
Yep.
hockey is better when they're good. They have one of the most rabid fan bases,
and they haven't won a championship since the 70s.
And they haven't, like the Knicks haven't won a championship since the 70s. And so I think definitely I hear you in the sense of like there's a big shiny benchmark that of 70 goals if Matthews can reach that, which is remarkable in its own right. On the Toronto team that I think so many people in so many different facets of the league have desperately wanted to succeed in this way.
Yeah. Some people hate them, but I mean, they could lose in the first round to the Florida Panthers so easily.
Right.
I think they will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There we go again.
I've just seen this movie so many times.
Totally. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the playoff race. Another NHL story here, major story. The Arizona Coyotes are finally moving. And I do feel really badly for Coyotes fans because this owner, I mean, what's his name? Alex Morello. I don't really know how to say it. Who cares about the stupid billionaires that use these teams as speculative assets and then throw them away and don't care about the fans, because that's exactly what happened here. I mean, he had no intention of keeping the team in. After Tempe, the ballot measure was rejected, and this freak realized that he couldn't get taxpayer money to pay for the stadium for the team that he doesn't care about. He basically said, I'm going to make it look like I'm trying to stay here. This is my speculation. I'm going to make it look like I'm trying to stay here. I'm going to make it seem like I have all of the intentions to keep the dogs in the desert, but that's not what's going to happen. And behind the scenes, and apparently a lot of the players and the workers that work with the Arizona Coyotes, they feel the same way, according to reporting by Elliot Friedman. They basically felt like the wool was pulled over their eyes and a fast one was pulled on them. Gary Bettman has wanted to keep the Arizona Coyotes in the Phoenix area because it's a major market media-wise. It's one of the, I think, 5 biggest media markets in the country. And because, even though it's Arizona and it's 1,000,000 degrees, there actually has been some success in terms of the minor the minor hockey down there. Austin Matthews came from Arizona. Matthew Nice, I forget how you say it. They also came out of Arizona. So there is some like American hockey minors culture there. But, the owner, the billionaire owner, was not necessarily, I think, sincere in wanting to keep the Coyotes in Arizona. So it appears that they are headed to Salt Lake City, and the ownership is telling the Coyotes players, we are planning to fight this, like blah, blah, blah. But behind the scenes you hear, I mean, Friedman basically reporting, no, it's happening. It's happening because there's already an arena there. They can play where the Jazz play. It's pretty old. It's a few decades old, but Salt Lake City is having the Winter Olympics in, I think, 10 years, something around that, 8-10 years. There's a promise that there's going to be a new stadium built there for that reason. So the NHL feels comfortable there. I feel sad for those fans, but at the same time, I also feel excited for fans in Salt Lake City and a colder area, right? Where there's probably a little bit more of a hockey culture. Although, I don't know, but they still will be able to, at least get out of that stupid college arena, which was such a joke. I mean, it looked ridiculous on camera to watch them play there. Coaches were doing press conferences with the exposed brick outside of the college outdoors. It was a bad look for the league.
That's sort of my thing, is that as much as I agree with you that like I do feel a lot of sympathy for either like current or lapsed Coyotes fans due to like just like how abominably this franchise has been treated and managed throughout its entire existence. I think even fans of this team who have somehow still stuck around through all of this embarrassment and misery, for no fault of their own, I might add, through everything that has basically been inflicted upon them as fans, I think a part of them might feel almost some sort of relief that, one, the city of Tempe wasn't basically ransacked to keep this team in town, and the fundamental unseriousness, the fundamental like lack of any sort of respect or dignity
Right.
afforded to these players in this team by having a professional hockey franchise playing in a college hockey arena.
Let alone how they just basically treated it as a money laundering
Absolutely,
operation and
100%.
didn't even try to win.
That's the other thing too, is that this is not even as Alex Mariuello, the owner. It's very clear that there was no overtures made to actually devote any sort of resources
to the
actually
team,
making this team even somewhat competitive, even striving
Yes.
towards competitiveness. At least the Ducks have Trevor Zegras. At least they have one good player, exciting player. At least like even some of these,
and they have Cutter Gauthier now because he refused to play for the the Flyers.
The Red Wings have been after their unbelievable run of postseason appearances have floundered a number of years. You can't say Steve Yzerman hasn't been trying his freaking hardest to make this team good.
Yeah,
he's drafted. He's tried to get a lot out of Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider, all these guys. Like, there are some basement hockey teams that are actually trying. Johnny Gaudreau went to freaking Columbus. Like, I'm saying, there's
you can be a bad team.
There's possibilities to even like try to have some sort of draw to your franchise, and the Coyotes have tried none of those things.
They have tried none of it because essentially this owner wanted to hit the $1 billion figure. It's a little bit more than what the Ottawa Senators were recently just sold for. He got that 1B number and he's happy with it, right? And that's basically it. And what's interesting is that I think that Morello maintains the distribution rights, and so they're going to have to be rebranded as something different. So he holds on to the rights if the NHL decides to expand and brings another team back to Arizona. He would have to get, someone would have to pay him for the rights to the name Coyotes, which is just like another kind of stab in the back to the rest of that to the fans in that area.
More money, please.
If anybody wants to come through and wants to use this Coyotes branding that people have affection for, I mean, those jerseys with the mosaic
I love those.
Are sick.
So fun.
Yeah. If people want to come back and call themselves the Coyotes, they're going to have to go back and double dip with this freak. I mean, it's so messed up. But at least there's a fresh start. At least there's some certainty. At least they're playing in an arena that is somewhat respectable, even though I know it's only 11,000 people. It's not necessarily ideal. But there is a way to restart the situation and hopefully give some level of respect to the players that play for that organization. And perhaps this new ownership group will be a little bit more committed to winning than previously. So that's my take on the situation. Oh, and I will also say about that Tempe thing, it's pretty universal that we didn't even really cover this, but Kansas City just rejected a ballot initiative for a new stadium for the Chiefs. And you can't get more successful than the Kansas City Chiefs in a market, because basically taxpayers, when you ask them, they don't want their taxpayer money going towards this. And
they also know how freaking rich Clark Hunt is.
Right.
They're like, we've won 3 Super Bowls. We've spent so much on concessions and tickets and ticket packages and jerseys and merchandising and all this. It's like, how do you not have enough money to...
We had frostbite. Like, people were almost on the verge of dying going to that Miami Dolphins playoff game in Arrowhead, right?
It's like there's not enough money there's not enough money for Clark Hunt and his family to pay for either updates to the stadium for a new one. There isn't.
Well,
I can't. It's actually like,
it's insane.
It's
but
unbelievable.
Did you see the NFLPA report card that they get Fs on all of their facilities and their training and everything too? Like, the fact that this this owner who inherited it from his oil tycoon,
he did inherit it, right?
Dad is going to skimp on a team that just has won you 3 Super Bowls in the past, 5 years, 6 years? Are you joking me?
That's what was fascinating about the report cards, though, is that so much of the ownership related stuff in Kansas City got horrible grades, whereas everything involving the coaching, like with Andy Reid, was like A++.
A++, yeah.
It's like the people closest to the players, but everything outside of it is horrible.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and so I bring that up to point out, like, of course the Tempe, Arizona voters were not going to approve of this stadium for the Coyotes that no one really cared. Not a lot of people care that much about. They haven't won, 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years in the way that it would be, relevant for the Chiefs, right? Like, this is a team that has achieved all success that you possibly can and will be successful in the future. You know why? Because it's actually deeply messed up that we as a society, under capitalism in this country have decided that taxpayer money can go towards a new stadium for a franchise, but that they have no ownership stake in maintaining that team for the future, right? Like, that's what happened in St. Louis. If you want taxpayer money for a stadium, you have to guarantee that you are staying in that city, because that means that the people in those, I don't even object to government money being used to maintain, some level of culture in the city, and there's economic opportunity that's brought in. There's people that get employed at those stadiums and all of that. But that means that the city has a stake in the team too, and that there's partial public ownership of it. That's the reality, and that's the conversation that we need to start having.
And the same thing goes for everything that we've seen with the Oakland A's, like just basically this committed desire for a kind of resentful or sort of like completely uncharitable rich person wanting to bleed the community from which they derive all of their attention of their franchise dry in order for them to like kind of pad their positioning in their tax bracket just a little bit more. Because at the end of the day, some of these budget top line numbers for some of these guys who are so freaking rich, like a guy like Mariuelo who has enough money to buy a team like this, or John Fisher has enough money to own a baseball team, it's a rounding error. It just means it would actually hurt their pockets.
Yep.
They'd rather not take the hit themselves and let literally thousands of people take smaller hits. Well, they have less money to work with in their pool, and that come tax season every year, they're going to have to be reminded, oh, wait, great. I'm paying money for a stadium that either A, I don't go to enough to actually warrant my actual payment for this, or the stadium is like many that we've experienced ourselves. I freaking hate knowing that my tax dollars went to MetLife Stadium, because MetLife Stadium is a shithole.
It's a shithole. It should be burned to the ground.
So for that to
not
be,
really,
but for that to be part of the process of saying, hey, let's bring this to the voters. You choose if you get to pay for the stadium or not. And it would be a real shame if you didn't, because then we'd maybe just leave and you wouldn't have a team to root for.
People don't care, though. People would say, I mean, like, then the votes happened, and it's not like, look what you made me do. People will be like, well, could we have had some sort of negotiation where is there something in it for us? No, because billionaire owners are doing whatever they want to do.
Because as you said, even the referendum aspect, it's not a choice, actually. It's essentially
it's ransom.
It's essentially a tax levy.
Yes.
It's almost like it's almost feudalist. It's like,
yeah,
we're basically saying, hey, you can vote on this. Either it's accept this tax measure, or we leave.
Yep. All right, let's end here with our favorite NFL player to cover, right, Bradley?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were done for the day.
Nope. The quarterback of your favorite team has said some more crap.
I thought we were finished.
Awful announcing said, Aaron Rodgers recently appeared on the I Can Fly pod, which has 1.7K subscribers on YouTube. It's a relatively unknown pod. I mean, this is good. Like, he said he didn't want to be a distraction anymore to the Jets. Well, then he'll just go on any random podcast, apparently, that has less than 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, at least at the time of recording. He was, they have interviewed Rory McIlroy before, but, he seems to be hell-bent on going on podcasts and spouting his conspiracy theories. He says he's not right-wing, but take a listen to everything he says here, and then you'll make your own assessment.
This is VP, but do you see a potential future in politics for yourself?
I've always thought politics is a total sham. I did a project on JFK when I was in high school and opened my eyes to what was really going on as I read this, narrative, the Warren Commission, and was just like, this is bullshit. And then as you get deeper into it, you realize he was one of, if not the last, true president who fought against the powers that be, who fought against the shadow government, who fought against the deep state, whatever you want to call it.
So what's annoying is like there's kernels of truth here, as with every conspiracy. Yes, the Warren Commission is BS. Yes, JFK, with the Bay of Pigs and with the deep state, if you want to call it that, right? Like there were incredibly powerful forces that were trying to get JFK and that government to push itself into further conflict with the USSR and make the Cold War a hot war and be more antagonistic towards Cuba. And JFK ran, by the way, as an anti-communist, very sympathetic to those kinds of forces, but he was extremely nervous, as he should have been, about getting the United States involved in some sort of massive conflict with the USSR. So after the Bay of Pigs, yeah, he became more skeptical of the deep state. And do I think that there was some involvement by the CIA, by the FBI, at the very least turning a blind eye to an assassination plot against JFK? Yes, absolutely. But where conspiracy theorists like this go so wrong is that this was because that the reason is that the deep state or whatever, the powers that be, wanted antagonism towards communism. It's all about capital. It's all about money. And it's about capitalism. And JFK was challenging to that in the sense that he did not want to openly go to war with the communist power at the time. Right? So I just want to give that context to say he's close. But all of the conclusions that he draws are actually extremely dangerous, as you'll hear in just a second.
Who fought against the powers that be, who fought against the shadow government, who fought against the deep state, whatever you want to call it, and was killed for it. Yeah. But not just JFK. People forget. RFK was killed as well. Mm-hmm. His brother, Bobby Kennedy's father, was also killed. And he fought against the powers that be as well. And you know, I'm proud to support Bobby. I think he's an incredible man. I think he has a vision to change the country. I don't know that it's that easy, but there was just a major change in Argentina. I have a dear friend who's Argentinian. And what's gone on there in a matter of a few months, balancing of the budget, a whole change, and a return of like nationalist pride, like proud to be an Argentinian.
All right, pause it.
You said
so. He was right. JFK, RFK, right in the wake of his brother's killing, was going to meet with union organizers in California, was speaking to black people in ways that other candidates weren't at the time. But the powers that be there was that he was challenging capitalism. He was challenging capitalism. He was challenging the deep state in that way, right? And then he turns to praising the libertarian reforms, the pro-capitalist, unfettered free market capitalist reforms in Argentina. They are opposite dynamics, buddy. They are opposite dynamics. And just challenging the powers that be is extremely vague to the point where you've completely lost the plot on the politics of the situation.
It's a fundamentally incoherent political position and historical position.
Ahistorical, absolutely. All right, keep going.
It's like nationalist pride.
No.
Proud to be an Argentinian. You said it after watching Hamilton. Like, I'm a red-blooded American. Like, I love this country. My grandfather fought in the Second World War. Like, I've always been a huge supporter in the troops, men and women who are willing to lay their lives on the line. Now, some of these wars that we fought are absolutely horseshit, and we're
which ones?
Lining the pockets of the Lockheed Martins of the world, and fighting these proxy wars all over the world, unfortunately. But the fucking men and women in uniform, I love them, and I get emotional when I hear the national anthem before games. I get emotional when I hear Lee Greenwood's "Proud to be an American," and I think we need a little bit more of that. Like, I think we've lost that like appreciation perspective. Like, there's one of my all-time favorite.
Was that it? Yeah. That was the part. Yeah. We can skip ahead because he starts talking, just rambling about a song that he likes. So his totally non-right-wing solution to the deep state is more nationalism. It really is frustrating to see somebody have like some you're right there, buddy. You're about to criticize powerful interests in this country and then come to the exact opposite conclusion that you need more nationalism, more pride about being an American. That is actually not what the conclusion that we should be drawing. Okay, I mean, it's confusing to me too, because back in the day he was supportive of Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem, and now all of a sudden he's saying that we've lost national pride. Well, why were you supportive of Colin those times before, saying that there were issues with this country? Now we need to be stoking national pride. He's not just lost it, he's also changed. Like, his perspective has changed based on what we saw before. But go ahead, Bradley.
No, I was just saying that I'm not only approaching this from an aesthetic perspective, but like, he doesn't look good.
He also was on the verge of tears talking about Lee Greenwood, as you were saying off camera, Trump's favorite song. Let's now play. Yeah. He goes on to explain even more his worldview here, and he has more conspiracy theories at this time. But I guess politics apparently is a total sham. Except this is why he supports Bobby Kennedy.
Bums who've been in government forever, who are insider trading like crazy and lining their pockets during their terms and post-career. How's that working out? Yeah. How's that working out for the average Joe, middle class, or lower middle class like I grew up? How's that working out for those people? Not too good. How's it working out? Housing prices, cost of food, the inflation that's going on. Healthy food. Chronic disease that we have in this country. Homelessness, unemployment. How's it working out? As we give, billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight a proxy war.
Well, that is real.
We have a southern border that's, being invaded.
Yep.
You listen to Mr. Weinstein on Rogan, it's pretty scary, some of the stuff that's going on, the different camps that are down there of individuals. Some people, Chinese nationalists,
not
of military age, other, South American, Central American people, kind of different ways of they're treated in their different camps, and a lot of scary stuff there. But just the country's in a bad place, and it's not going to get better with Weekend at Bernie's, who can barely put a sentence together, if that's even him. Yeah. It's not going to get better.
If that's even him?
I don't think, with Mr. Trump, Mr. President Trump, who had 4 years to do it and kept Anthony Fauci in charge.
All right, pause it. Okay. So the subtle...
So that's the issue with what Trump did during those 4 years, was keep the head of the National Institute for Infectious Diseases.
But he still has more respect for him because he calls him Mr. Trump there.
Mr. President Trump.
And then he says, Biden, if that even is him. So...
Weekend at Bernie's. Oh, this guy's so...
Literally, he's trying to say that Biden's being... like in the way that people used to say that Paul McCartney got replaced or Avril Lavigne got replaced by some sort of look-alike. This is what he believes. He believes Biden, but he challenges his belief system. I'm not sure. I forget how my brain kind of just got fried listening to this, but at one point he talks about how he grew up in like a fundamentalist religious household, and or maybe not fundamentalist, but extremely religious Christian household. And that was part of what I liked about him back in the day, which was he was kind of critical of religion and hierarchy and those kinds of things. But you see when it gets to this point where it's literally pathological, where he challenges all of these preconceived notions, right, that are just like fundamental realities about our society, and has completely lost the plot about what is actually challenging power in a healthy way and what is going batshit crazy. All right, keep going.
Had 4 years to do it and kept Anthony Fauci in charge after his record on AIDS, with AZT, with all these other ridiculous, supposed pandemics that he was in charge of.
Supposed pandemics.
And how the chronic disease level since he's been in some sort of office in the 80s has exponentially gotten worse. Autism rates have gotten worse. Childhood diseases, comorbidities, just the general health and wellness of our society. Look at old like 1950s and 60s presidential fitness programs where everybody's fit. Look at pictures of the beach.
Exactly.
We have
Right.
like healthy, skinny people, and now you
White
have,
people.
you know, a high
Separate
percentage
from
of
black
kids
people.
are obese. High percentage of adults are morbidly obese. You had the majority of people dying from COVID had at least 3 comorbidities that they were dealing with. Like, we're not getting better having these people in charge.
Yeah.
So why not make a change? And I'm going to support Bobby and keep spreading his message. But the two-party system that we got in place doesn't work. Hasn't been working. Hasn't been working really since JFK was in office. And we need somebody who's willing to lay it on the line. That's what I love about Bobby. Think about it. They killed his uncle.
Here we go.
Killed his dad. We know CIA was involved, right? I mean, they can't declassify it because it's so damning. We know the FBI was involved. Hoover hated the Kennedys,
Yeah.
True.
hated them.
But-
Alan Dulles was fired as the director of the CIA after he botched the Bay of Pigs and tried to get Operation Northwoods to happen to literally start World War III and invade Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
He was fired. He was on the fucking Warren Commission. Alan Dulles was. As was Gerald Ford, who was the right-hand man of J. Edgar Hoover, who hated the Kennedys. Like, we know they're involved. But so Bobby loses his uncle, JFK, his father, RFK. His cousin dies in a plane crash when he was running against Hillary Clinton. Like, I'm not saying that was conspiracy, but it's kind of a weird coincidence. Bobby's in danger, you know? Like, he's putting himself on the line.
Yeah.
Why? Because he fucking believes in this country. He believes in this country. He believes in the good in people, and he believes he can make a difference. That's somebody I can get behind who's willing to lay it on the line. Because that is, like I said earlier, the archetype of everything we love about Luke Skywalker and Han Solo.
Oh,
Everything we love about Frodo and Sam and Aragorn and Gandalf and Merry and Cook. Right? Everything that we love about Gamora and Groot and Rocket and Drax. Like, and Chris Pratt's character in Guardians.
Yeah.
It's these people believe in something. Sometimes they can't explain it. Like in
okay, wait,
Gladiator.
that's all. I had to get to the part where he compares Bobby Kennedy to Groot. That was the part I had to get to.
When he said Gamora, I was like, is he talking about the Bible? Like, that was a bad story. No, he's talking about Gamora from freaking Guardians of the Galaxy. He's talking about Marvel. I can't believe it. These people, they're not people. They're not real.
Oh, you're telling me that
They're superheroes. They're fake.
Merry and Pip are not people. How about Aragorn? Okay, I mean Aragorn was one of the humans in Lord of the Rings. So you're trying to tell me that he's not people?
I don't understand how somebody who takes himself so seriously is literally alluding to in a way that he and somehow in how he's like seeing a more prosperous or like utopian America. It's alluding to people who aren't real.
I know.
They're literally characters.
The reason they're an archetype, buddy, is that that doesn't exist in reality. But like, I mean, again, I will say this: that's all we have for him. I just wanted to get to the part where he compared them to Luke Skywalker.
Groot's a tree person.
He also is accusing Hillary Clinton of being involved in the plane crash death of JFK Jr., which is just like not cool. I mean, Again, I was just saying, look, I love my Real Housewives, and I have a special affection for Carol Radziwill. Like, that was a pretty traumatic event for people. They died really tragically. Let's not make it into something that isn't even true. Hillary Clinton, yes, became the senator from New York, but what he was running against her based on what?
You only say that with the qualifier of I'm not trying to spread a conspiracy theory, but it's a unique coincidence for the exact reason of furthering that conspiracy and making people question whether that was a unique coincidence of whatever you're formulating.
Yeah. JFK Jr. was not running against Clinton for the open seat, although he did have an exploratory meeting about it in March 1999 before concluding he was not ready.
So Hillary Clinton
heard about that.
So Hillary Clinton in her coveralls took took a wrench to that helicopter and killed JFK Jr. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just like she dragged Seth Rich's body to the park
and killed Vince Foster.
And killed Vince Foster. Yeah, all of those people that
Should we maybe consider why so many of these guys have these fantasies of Hillary Clinton murdering people as opposed to the idea that she murdered these people? Why are they so hell-bent on imagining this lady killing people?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
there's something real. There's something, and I'm not. And listen, I for the most part, across the board, I hate Hillary Clinton. But like, I'm saying,
oh yes, I hate her too.
I'm saying this like there is a level of real, genuine psychosis with this shit.
Oh yeah, well, it's like it's all of it. It's misogyny. It's this like magical thinking about powerful people as if it's not just like this shadowy corruption that we talk about. Where I concede to him, a lot of he actually said some correct things about Dulles and about the Warren Commission and about, you know, some of the shadiness involved and the fact that there probably was some CIA involvement in the killing of JFK and RFK. I mean, at the very least, they probably had intelligence about it and didn't do anything. That's my assessment of things. But, you know, everything else is crap. Every conclusion he comes to is crap. And then when he says he's not political and that the two-party system is bullshit, he believes all this right-wing stuff. All of it. That there are Chinese nationals at the southern border. That, you know, Hillary Clinton killed JFK Jr.
Or even just referring to it as an invasion. That is absolutely without question, no matter who he says he supports, that's right-wing language.
Absolutely.
That's right-wing rhetoric. That is stuff that Stephen Miller has basically put into the ecosystem of how we talk about immigrants and immigration.
And you know what even is amazing, too? Even his fixation on the archetype. And when he's talking about, like,
it's
Luke
Tim
Skywalker,
Bullshit.
It's Tim
It's
Pool.
literally Tim Bullshit.
Right.
It's imagining a world where fiction. Listen, I'm not saying that, like for example, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair was technically a fictional book, and it inspired real world change because it was about a guy working in a meatpacking plant in New York in the early 1900s. Guardians of the Galaxy is about a guy who literally lives in space with a anthropomorphic raccoon and a tree person friend and a completely blue lady and her cyborg sister. There's nothing about it that translates.
Wow, you don't really see how that completely relates to the .com market.
Yeah,
crash?
or to legal immigration or to health food in the United States. Yeah, and the other thing to your point about the magical thinking aspect, as opposed to actually thinking about the mundane indignities and inequities that we exist in every single day of our lives in this country. I don't see Aaron Rodgers in any way being like, that's why we need to strengthen labor protections for
yes.
people. That's why we need to make sure that healthcare is...
He used to be the representative, by the way, for the Green Bay Packers in the union. So, I mean, he has lost his mind. He is a prime example. Psychedelics do not make you more liberal. Sometimes if you're narcissistic or you have delusions of grandeur, it makes you more convinced of your bullshit. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this guy.
And the other thing, saying that, speaking of the thing with like saying that our country's so obese, it was better in the 1950s. As we were saying, sort of off mic there, saying anything was the best in the 1950s, even if he wants to make it as so narrowly as how people appeared aesthetically and how people appeared in terms of their actual physical appearance. You are, no matter any way you slice it, acknowledging that you would prefer a society that was segregated, that was predicated and built upon severe, unapologetic racial violence with impunity. So you could say that these people on the beach in these photos were skinny.
I mean, what is he talking about too? Life expectancy has gone up. Infant mortality.
Right.
I mean, infant mortality is down. Right. I'm trying to get it right.
Yeah,
health outcomes have improved over time. So, okay, maybe people look a little fat compared to you, and in your estimation. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about.
Which is also even a body image concern, which there's been a lot of research that does not always comport with physical health. Like,
I mean, people rates of cancer are down. The reason that maybe hunger looks different in a fast food society versus back then is that now it's about malnutrition and not good healthcare versus not having literal food to feed yourself. There's little differences, and we have made improvements as a society in that way.
Or maybe grocery stores could either be publicly owned, or so that some of the prices would go down, or there'd be price controls on groceries, or maybe every food desert that is basically disproportionately in every single black and brown neighborhood, so that people's options when they are economically when they're impoverished or immiserated by society, aren't just McDonald's and going to the fucking Dollar Tree for shit.
Yeah.
How about that, Aaron? I guess that probably doesn't make sense because you wouldn't have fat people to kick around.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say is just the inability to process that our society is fucked up enough as it is, that you don't need to imagine this shit, is that the prime example of that to me is how much people have latched onto the fact that the camera footage from Jeffrey Epstein committing suicide, that the tapes were basically either written over or the camera stopped working, or whatever the case may be. That basically every investigation points to the fact that it was a complete bureaucratic and administrative malfunction. Instead of Aaron Rodgers or anyone in his ilk potentially thinking, wow, our prisons are probably some of the most undemocratic, torturous, vile places on the planet, and not because of who inhabits them, but because of who operates them. We treat people like they're zoo animals, surveilling them, treating them like garbage, and that error is emblematic of something that Jeffrey Epstein, for the monster that he was, still there was not enough responsibility from anyone involved there to make sure he was being properly taken care of or looked after.
Or at least considering that possibility.
Even the people who in the most punitive society, which is the one that we basically live in, that every single person who commits a crime deserves to be punished within an inch of their lives, how we do not give a shit about those people, and that we do everything we can to dehumanize them. I wonder if Aaron Rodgers has ever thought about that, or he thought, I sense a conspiracy is afoot. Why were the tapes missing? There's no appetite whatsoever to deduce a structural critique of literally anything, because it's easier and more fun and more interesting and more touching of the stoking the coals, or putting your hand on the stove type of construction to say, yeah, this is a conspiracy. And honestly, are you offended by what I'm saying? Is it bothering you that I'm a little bit that I'm at the next level? There's something so personally odious and personally devious and pernicious about doing this with the attitude and with the intention of why he's doing it, which I know from the way he says it.
It's a libertarian.
Without having to know Aaron Rodgers personally.
It's a libertarian construction, right? I mean, everything is about the individual and different actions and shady people behind the scenes, but there's never we've created systems, and that's why people are immiserated. And so that's just libertarian conservatism. That's basically it. And I love how special he thinks he is, but in the reality, no. This is just how your politics are incredibly standard in that way.
But anyway, can't wait to see him back on Sundays on the gridiron.
Yeah, what are you thinking? 7-11 this year? Or 7? Wait, sorry, no. 17 games. 7-10. 7-10.
I quit.
You quit?
After hearing him say Gamora and Groot, I'm never.
You're over it. All right, guys, we're gonna read some IMs and get out of here. Kowalski says, Emma, we can all agree that Ryan Gosling is amazing, but he was a total liability as cornerback, and remember the Titans. Yes, we all can agree on that. And what he learned about he learns about Ain't No Mountain High Enough or whatever in that movie, and it solves racism. That's his whole role. F Lefty says, who do you think will win the Magic vs. Cavs series? I think I said the Magic. Maybe I'll say Magic in 6. J-Man J says, I'm jacked for the playoffs. Winnipeg big win 7-0 over the Avs this weekend, who they play in the first round. Also, Emma, don't worry, the Rangers are going to have the easiest first round opponent. Kucherov is the MVP for me, left his best. Knocking on wood. Denver fan says, I wish the Yotes had moved somewhere like Quebec, but they rebranded as the SLC Pucks. If they rebrand as the SLC Pucks, it might be worth it. Surfing Idiot says, significantly less hockey culture in Utah than Arizona. Arizona has an NCAA team, only Western state besides Colorado, and the team hasn't had a chance to succeed in Phoenix since they played downtown and had stable ownership. Fair enough. Morello only bought the team for the sportsbook license. He's a casino guy, and as soon as he couldn't get the favorable development deal in Tempe, he gave up. There we go. Mind Pillow Guy, isn't it cool how many people living among us who only have ever learned sociology and politics from people who have regular repetitive trauma to their brains for their jobs? Anyway, I can't wait to see Jordan Love show the Eagles what a QB looks like in Brazil. That will be fun. Yeah, that'll be great. Did you hear that, Bradley? It's going to be the Brazil game this year.
No, yeah.
Packers Eagles. Fun.
Maybe see Lula in the stands.
Oh my God! I mean, that's like the internet. That's an international game I can get excited about. Germany, who gives a crap? London,
I mean,
enough.
Yeah, it's also like the time difference stuff. Where I'm like, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the news for you, there will be a time difference.
How much is Brazil?
Oh yeah, look up what the time is in Brazil right now. Brazil time?
All right, so they're only an hour ahead of us.
Oh, perfect.
So that's not
All
so
right.
bad.
You're right.
That could be worse.
You're right. I mean, the seasons change northern to southern hemisphere, but not the time. I should know that. I should know such a thing.
It's standard geography.
Floyd the Barber says this is harder to watch than the end of Requiem for a Dream. And the final IM of, which, I mean, totally, they were all vaxxed. I mean, Jared Leto loses his arm. He had a needle put into that arm.
Yeah, what do you think was in there?
What was in that needle?
mRNA.
The final IM of the day. Tater Tot, would this turn from Rodgers have happened if he didn't get injured last year? He really does have too much free time. Unfortunately, I think yes. All right, guys. Great show. We will see you next week when we will have a little bit more information on the NHL playoffs, and the NBA plan will be starting tomorrow. Very fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.